Okay, people, let's be honest. Have you ever experienced the pain of having someone you're interested in abruptly withdraws one day, everything is going well, and then, as if they've flipped a switch, you're out of their line of sight, leaving you to wonder what went wrong? Incorrectly evaluating each and every contact, and perhaps even holding yourself responsible for not done enough. You begin to persuade yourself that sending that final message will be worthwhile if you only put in a little more effort. They will notice you again if you happen to run into them. But here's the inactuality. This kind of thinking is precisely what pushes them farther apart. Let's say, the final time you want to unintentionally run, you're inclined to reach out, send them a text or give them a call in the hopes that they would return. Consider whether you are acting confidently each time you get that inclination, or insecurity, but let's be honest, if you're acting out of fear of, if you lose them, you're already diminishing your value and sending a message that you're there for the taking, that you're prepared to forego your dignity in order to maintain their presence. And when you do that, you might as well prepare to be viewed as a choice, or worse, as trash, as you're basically telling, they don't have to respect you, since you don't respect yourself if they ignore you or pull away. People, you are the true cause of it. It's not that you weren't sufficient or didn't accomplish enough. Rather, they're seeing your desperation and your excessive availability willing, which causes them to lose respect for you and begin to see you as someone who's, simply put, there is someone who will remain despite their behavior, and when you give them the impression that you are giving, the first step is to quit trying, so give them permission to continue treating you that way. So difficult that it's tempting to try to hang on more tightly, yet each time you do, you're stating unequivocally that I need your approval, which isn't appealing. Exhausting. The more you hold on, the more they will distance themselves. Here's the cruel part. If you clench your fist to catch water, the harder you press, the faster it will slip through your fingers. The truth is that you must let go if you want them to return. Here's a question to ask. Why are you clinging to someone who is separating from you if they're retreating? Because they realize they don't need to put in any effort to keep you around. Pursuing, and they are aware that they don't need to do anything to keep your interest. People value the real world, what they have to work for, what they earn, and when you keep turning up and sending those texts to check in, you're doing everything the piece, and by saying so, you're eliminating any feeling of mystery or attraction. What if you choose to do this instead of sending that subsequent text? Nothing at all allowed them to sense that silence, which allowed them to sit with the option. People are created to pull away, so they miss what's always there, instead of what. When you stop attempting to bridge the gap they begin, they can't have it, observing the space they've created and the fact that you're giving it. This is always a reality check. Vulnerability is a power move. You virtually beg for someone's attention when you reach out to them who is ignoring you, yet nothing makes you seem, are you less valuable than someone who is prepared to give up their pride and sense of value in order to gain a scrap of their time? Truly going to keep bringing yourself down in the hopes that they will react if you do? You're allowing yourself to be taken advantage of, because if they see that you're prepared to compromise your honor, they'll think they can treat you whatever they want, and that you will remain with them if they don't try. But your reaction to it is your responsibility. If you're responding to their distance by making an effort, you're contributing to a loop in which they gain complete control and you receive none, effectively informing them that no matter what you do, I will remain here. And why would they need to do any effort if that's the energy you're providing? People who put out effort seek out what they could lose rather than what is certain to exist. No matter how little they invest, you should do the following. Quit chasing and start. When people notice that you're not just sitting around waiting, they start to focus on you. They will begin to feel the effects of your absence, so avoid being that person who is constantly hoping and checking their phone. You're superior to someone who waits about as if their life is on pause for a message. That begin to demonstrate to them, without uttering a word, how valuable you are, as saying, suggesting you're better off doing something else than waiting for someone to treat you. Enjoy a choice. Consider it if you're always attempting to demonstrate what. Does that indicate that you're putting all of your value into yourself? In their hands, awaiting their recognition. But the reality is that they won't respect you if you don't respect yourself. When you take a step back and concentrate on, they'll notice that you're becoming your greatest self and wonder what happened to the someone who was always willing to pursue and have faith in me. Imagine them reaching out when they start to miss you, understanding what they've confused. They begin to question why you're not available right now. Although they might not express it, providing them with the attention they took for granted, they will begin to think about you and miss the energy you use to freely give. And if they recognize your value, they will crawl back when they do. Now that you are in a position of authority rather than them, let them feel your absence and let them experience what it's like to be alone without you. Simply stop making them the center of your universe and stop being disrespectful or playing games with them. Let them wonder what you're up to and who you're spending your time with, since they have to work to get close to you. And the reason behind your decision to stop waiting around for people whenever you feel the need to. Saying, "I stand strong," will help you reach out and slap yourself till you believe it. If you behave as though you're in need of approval, you will never receive meaningless affirmation. But when you are strong, take a step back and concentrate on your personal development, since you're creating a life that they'll want to be a part of. Not merely a backup plan, you're the one they'll turn to when they realize what they can and cannot let go of. Don't be shy, simply write it down in the comments for everyone to see. Be courageous now and show the world your strength by dropping it down. I remain steadfast. This is the point at which you regain your value, so if you're prepared to show them how valuable you are, you're ready to give up chasing. Join me as we explore the 7 steps that will help you take charge. If you're serious about changing this, click the subscribe button. This video is great if we're done playing small and you're prepared to take charge and tell everybody who needs to hear this. Finished being alternatives, we're selecting ourselves first. First, cut off the craving, so this is where it begins if they're giving or pulling away. Giving them the cold shoulder isn't the first thing you should do. The first step is to stop the urge to reach out and check in. No matter what you do to catch their attention, it will always backfire. You give up your authority and appear as though you're in need. You say, "I'm at your mercy, and it's time to fight that instinct and return, because I need you to feel entire." In charge, let's be honest. Lusting for their attention makes you reliant. Drinking salt water when feeling thirsty causes you to get more and more thirsty, eventually reaching for out, continuously looking for a clue or indication that they are interested in you and yourself, caught up in this need cycle. Yet the cruel reality is that desiring alone makes you appear weaker to them, and it's the quickest way to lose your sense of value and self-respect. Why would you continue to crave them when they're ignoring you? They've shown you that they're prepared to back off, so now it's your turn. I want you to keep in mind that neediness repels when you turn to do the same. If you want them to be drawn back to you, you must be independent. Disengage the craving by visualizing it as a fire inside of you that consumes your time. Concentrate your efforts. Once you stop needing anything, it's time to extinguish the fire. This isn't about them anymore. You're escaping the bonds of dependency, not merely kicking a habit. Imagine this each time you feel that way. It's about you taking back your worth. The more you give in to the impulse to reach out, the more you're feeding a beast that becomes stronger with each act of need, governs you, But as soon as you make the decision to stop and dedicate yourself to severing that desire, the beast begins to weaken. You're regaining your authority, your self-esteem, and your control. Stepping back to allow them to sense the space you create, rather than occupying it with incessant movements that only serve to distance themselves from them. And let's face it, this isn't going to. It takes courage and discipline to stop the need, but that's precisely why it's powerful. Here's where you demonstrate to yourself that you're demonstrating to yourself that your value is independent of their response, more than the attention they offer you. Regardless of their awareness or concern, you're giving yourself the gift of being freed from this draining cycle, and believe me, they will notice when they finally realize that you are no longer contacting them and they sense the stillness. I have a question for you. Are you or the urge in control? Because if you're behaving needily and ceding authority over your own life, happiness, but you're declaring "I'm done" when you choose to stop seeking it. I'm selecting myself by allowing this to govern me, and that's where when you take a step back and let the yearning to subside, you're creating a new norm that demonstrates your value beyond being someone's afterthought. In practical terms, then, what does it mean to stop the craving? Halting those check-ins and those who merely wish to send hello SMS. Every action intended to elicit a reaction requires you to look at your phone, and opting not to contact it means letting go of the incessant need to, if they are online, check their social media accounts to see if they have posted. Every time you resist, they've insinuated that they're missing you. You're maturing. Stronger, you're developing a layer of self-reliance that lessens the impact of their absence. And when you stop craving them, that's when it becomes genuine. Pay attention, since you're not the one looking when the tables abruptly change. They are the ones who are beginning to experience the loss that people long for, what they are unable to have, and when you cease giving them attention on a silver platter, they sense the void and recognize that they no longer have easy access to curiosity takes over, and they begin to question why you've pulled, why aren't you waiting there anymore? Let me tell you that curiosity is cutting off. The craving doesn't simply help you feel stronger. Let's go even further. When you're focused on yourself and not on them, it gives you more energy to spend in yourself. You're investing that energy in your objectives, development, and contentment, making their lives less about getting their approval, and believe me, people are attracted to those who live with. When you're focused on improving yourself, you're not just more powerful, but also more appealing, because you're displaying both of them and yourself, that you don't require someone else to finish you each time you remind yourself when you feel the desire to say, "I don't need them to feel complete," till you believe it, and observe how your self-confidence grows and how that desire fades and contracts, because severing the yearning isn't a one-time event. It's a pledge you make to yourself, stating, "I deserve better than this. I should be valued by someone, not expected to accomplish everything." Cutting off the craving doesn't mean you stop chasing people. Let's be clear. Caring or ceasing to feel indicates that you prioritize your own self-respect, allowing them space, but more significantly, allowing yourself room to develop. When you quit desiring, you begin to create a healing and self-realization process, independence that exudes self-assurance, and that self-assurance is alluring. You're no longer providing them with control over your feelings. You're taking that control back for yourself. So here's your confirmation that whenever you feel the need to reach out, "I am complete as I am." Say it out, write it down, and repeat it until it becomes ingrained in your being. Because severing the hunger is about realizing that you are sufficient with or without them, not only about them. When they're not looking, now is the time to stand up and let them feel the fact that you're no longer at their beck and call. And if they return, it's because they've noticed the strength you possess. If not, they weren't worth pursuing in the first place. But by cutting off, you've already satisfied the hunger and shown yourself that you're not worth. It's negotiable that the attention of others does not determine your existence, is where setting the tone begins, the first step to taking back your authority. For the respect and life you deserve, and remain with me because of what lies ahead, will push you to the limit of your power. Number 2. Fade out of you're prepared for the next phase, which is to fade out of the craving now that you've taken the initial step to do so. Sight. This phase is the actual physical activity rather than merely a continuance. That strengthens your newly discovered independence by reducing your inner need for their approval, regained control over your feelings. It's time to act and allow them to. Fading out of sight is about decreasing your visibility in the environment you're creating. Presence in their lives. If you've been consistently present and accessible, constantly involved, it's time to back off and become less accessible. This isn't about being impolite or engaging in games. Rather, it's about allowing the outside to mirror your previous internal change. Is a strong follow-through that sends the it becomes serious when you convey that you are no longer reliant on their attention. When you retreat in this way, you may experience a wave of panic and worry that it will pass. Being out of sight will cause them to completely forget you, which will encourage them to move on or find someone else. It hurts to admit that, but if they do forget you, here's the reality. It was never intended to last, even if you take a step back, and more likely, more often than not, your absence will have a greater effect than your ever-present presence. People notice what they can do and don't overlook what's always available. The genius of fading away is that you're making a space that makes it easy to reach. They sense your disappearance and wonder why you're not there anymore and why you abruptly left. Back, but you can't be concerned about their immediate attention or reaction. This stage aims to restore the equilibrium of attention and belief that your efforts will yield results. Being absent has greater power than being there all the time, especially as you move through the next phases, so be sure to stick with me during the entire process. Consider it this way: if fading out won't cause people to forget you because they genuinely value you, rather, it will have conversely. It will arouse interest and foster a feeling of intrigue. By being silent, you're allowing them to experience it without providing them with a peak of the void you depart from, and if they begin to question whether they can sense your absence, indicates that they are aware of your influence. If not, then you will only gain from this period of separation as you concentrate more on yourself and create a life that doesn't depend on someone else's attention to feel whole. You're rerouting it as you fade out. Concentrate on yourself, investing in your own life, your own objectives, and your own. The largest error people make during this phase of enjoyment is to believe that fading out merely entails waiting in the background. But when you fade out, you're taking a step back with purpose. You're empowering yourself rather than waiting for them to. You're demonstrating to them and to yourself that you're more than just a useful presence. Remember that fading away doesn't imply completely disappearing. You're still there. They don't have you on demand. Live your life with an emphasis on personal development and fulfillment, yet you're not. The person who was always available and constantly checking is no longer the one reaching out. You're taking back that area for yourself and turning into a mysterious figure. By placing the ball in their court and having them be the one to question what happened, it's similar to rejoicing in the connection. You're up to, and here's a quick tip for when concern starts to creep in, that they will go on if I fade out. So I'm repeating this affirmation. Remember that, because if they're genuinely interested, if they genuinely see your worth, people won't be able to forget you, even if you've taken a step back, because your influence is already there, and you're intensifying it by fading it out. Have faith that this area will only serve to increase their awareness of what they have lost, and this is where the next steps in fading out come into play. May seem risky, but it's only a little portion of the larger picture. Each future step will further solidify this change, intensifying their sense of your absence and make you more resilient and self-sufficient. Keep in mind that this isn't about obtaining a rapid response, it's about changing the dynamic entirely. So, inhale deeply. Take a step back and allow yourself to disappear from view. This may not feel comfortable. However, it's a significant change that will make them realize you're more than just a trustworthy person. You are an individual with a unique life, growth, and path. And that confidence, trust, that independence is magnetic and will stick with me here, since the subsequent phase will expand upon this even more. And we're just getting began by outlining exactly what they were missing, then clicked the like button if you're serious about seeing results, you're prepared to regain control and subscribe. This via number 3. Now that you've severed the inner weapon, desiring their attention, it's time to move on to the next phase. Fade out of. Consider this as putting your internal change into action on the outside. Step 1. You overcame the temptation to rely on their approval, to look for their focus in order to feel safe. And now that you have fade out of sight, you're taking action by physically withdrawing your presence and energy from their reality. This isn't merely about fading away, it's about establishing a purposeful separation that strengthens your, to be clear. Fading out isn't about playing games or vanishing to cause drama. Rather, it's about, when you stop the craving, you're letting the mental space you've created come to life. Recover mental and emotional mastery. Now, by fading out, you're demonstrating your decision to stop investing your time, effort, or presence in someone who isn't. Being out of sight will cause them to completely forget you, which will encourage them to move on or find someone else. It hurts to admit that, but if they do forget you, here's the reality. It was never intended to last, even if you take a step back, and more likely, more often than not, your absence will have a greater effect than your ever-present presence. People notice what they can do and don't overlook what's always available. The genius of fading away is that you're making a space that makes it easy to reach. They sense your disappearance and wonder why you're not there anymore and why you abruptly left. Back. But you can't be concerned about their immediate attention or reaction. This stage aims to restore the equilibrium of attention and belief that your efforts will yield results. Being absent has greater power than being there all the time, especially as you move through the next phases, so be sure to stick with me during the entire process. Consider it this way: if fading out won't cause people to forget you because they genuinely value you, rather, it will have conversely, it will arouse interest and foster a feeling of intrigue. By being silent, you're allowing them to experience it without providing them with a peak of the void you depart from, and if they begin to question whether they can sense your absence, indicates that they are aware of your influence. If not, then you will only gain from this period of separation as you concentrate more on yourself and create a life that doesn't depend on someone else's attention to feel whole. You're rerouting it as you fade out. Concentrate on yourself, investing in your own life, your own objectives, and your own. The largest error people make during this phase of enjoyment is to believe that fading out merely entails waiting in the background. But when you fade out, you're taking a step back with purpose. You're empowering yourself rather than waiting for them to. You're demonstrating to them and to yourself that you're more than just a useful presence. Remember that fading away doesn't imply completely disappearing. You're still there. They don't have you on demand. Live your life with an emphasis on personal development and fulfillment, yet you're not. The person who was always available and constantly checking is no longer the one reaching out. You're taking back that area for yourself and turning into a mysterious figure. By placing the ball in their court and having them be the one to question what happened, it's similar to rejoicing in the connection. You're up to, and here's a quick tip for when concern starts to creep in, that they will go on if I fade out. So I'm repeating this affirmation. Remember that, because if they're genuinely interested, if they genuinely see your worth, people won't be able to forget you, even if you've taken a step back, because your influence is already there, and you're intensifying it by fading it out. Have faith that this area will only serve to increase their awareness of what they have lost, and this is where the next steps in fading out come into play. May seem risky, but it's only a little portion of the larger picture. Each future step will further solidify this change, intensifying their sense of your absence and make you more resilient and self-sufficient. Keep in mind that this isn't about obtaining a rapid response, it's about changing the dynamic entirely. So, inhale deeply. Take a step back and allow yourself to disappear from view. This may not feel comfortable. However, it's a significant change that will make them realize you're more than just a trustworthy person. You are an individual with a unique life, growth, and path. And that confidence, trust, that independence is magnetic and will stick with me here, since the subsequent phase will expand upon this even more. And we're just getting began by outlining exactly what they were missing, then clicked the like button if you're serious about seeing results, you're prepared to regain control and subscribe. This via number 3. Now that you've severed the inner weapon, desiring their attention, it's time to move on to the next phase. Fade out of. Consider this as putting your internal change into action on the outside. Step 1. You overcame the temptation to rely on their approval, to look for their focus in order to feel safe. And now that you have fade out of sight, you're taking action by physically withdrawing your presence and energy from their reality. This isn't merely about fading away, it's about establishing a purposeful separation that strengthens your, to be clear. Fading out isn't about playing games or vanishing to cause drama. Rather, it's about, when you stop the craving, you're letting the mental space you've created come to life. Recover mental and emotional mastery. Now, by fading out, you're demonstrating your decision to stop investing your time, effort, or presence in someone who isn't. Responding to demonstrate your ability to stand on your own 2 feet, not to punish them. Robust without their ongoing participation. And yes, I am aware of what you may be wondering: what would happen if they forgot about me entirely? This is a concern that might creep in. Up as you're retreating, but let's dissect that. If they're sincerely interested, this distance won't make them forget about you. Instead, it will. When you fade out, you leave a space that causes folks on the other side of you to notice what's suddenly missing. They become intrigued and wonder why you're gone. And even if they don't immediately return, this distance is ephemeral. The actions we're about to discuss will only strengthen your influence, and they'll quickly understand what they're losing out on this. And it's not about forcing them to return right away. Considering beginning a procedure that may eventually render your absence unavoidable. Disregard, which is why you must stay with me through these subsequent phases. On one another, changing their perception of you, and it starts here with fading out of view. But what does this actually mean in real life? You are no longer available, and the person who is present at the event can no longer casually check in with you. Suddenly, you're not enjoying their posts, following their updates, or by answering their texts right away. You're letting go of the desire to seem in their world so often, but you're focusing on yourself instead, putting money into yourself and allowing them to feel the consequences of your absence. Every time you used to contact them to check in or show up for them, it looked like this. You're now making the decision to take care of yourself, Begin a project you've been putting off, reach a personal objective, and spending time with those who truly care about you and are committed to improving your life when you're giving them time to think back on the part you played in their lives by not being in the spotlight all the time, allowing them to lose sight of what they had. And this is a crucial point. Fading away does not imply permanent silence. Rather, it is a brief reset that gives you the opportunity for them to understand what they're missing while you're always there, and to fortify yourself without their influence. They don't have any cause to notice your absence or wonder, yet as you fade, they begin to notice that you're not as accessible as they once were. Realization piques interest and returns control to you. This step isn't not about ignoring them or being petty for the sake of it, but rather about demonstrating via your behavior that you're no longer. They'll notice this change if you put in all the work, and that's just what you desire, since they'll begin to perceive you differently once they do discover that you're not. You're the one regaining control and concentrating on their needs, not the one who's always there for them. Personal development and leading a life that is no longer focused on them. Keep in mind, people are drawn to independence when you can support yourself. People are drawn to you when you're focused on your own objectives and happiness, because by disappearing from view, you're demonstrating your independence, that you don't require them to feel whole, and that people are unable to ignore the energy's power, magnetic properties, and demonstrates your contentment with your identity, whether or not you find this phase is challenging. But remember that I am whole, and my being present is a luxury rather than a given. Whenever you feel the need to check in or to show up, do this again. Affirmation. Keep in mind that you're not doing anything to get their approval. This to strengthen your resolve to concentrate on creating a fulfilling life without them. So here's your purpose with a pullback, inward focus, and fade out of sight to allow the distance. Do its work, allows them to experience what it's like to not be there all the time. You're generating a sense of mystery and confidence-based energy. And as you proceed, you'll notice that this area gradually begins to work in your advantage by drawing them to stay with me, because this will be amplified by what comes next. Distance and prepare them for a change they won't anticipate. Number 4, you're turning into someone people won't soon forget. Enigma, you've stopped the yearning by now, you've disappeared, and now it's time to advance. And this step is all about being a mystery. Becoming into someone who is difficult to identify, someone whose energy and presence are captivating but elusive. When you turn into a mystery, you're a mystery now, not that open book they can quickly scan. They want to comprehend someone they can't stop thinking about. So how do you first establish this aura of mystery? By keeping your movements beneath the radar. They don't have to be aware of every fact about your life or your activities. So if they do, don't. At this moment, you've put in the effort you've made, so you reverse the game in silence. Embrace mystery, fortify yourself, and let go of the craving. Now that you have emotional armor, it's time to completely reverse the game quietly. This phase is about taking back the authority you may have granted away, by letting them go rather than by confronting them or requesting their attention. Your silence does all the work. It speaks louder than words and might have greater impact. Regarding your self-worth, independence and confidence, when you remain mute, you're declaring that you don't care, and that their behavior doesn't define your contentment or serenity is a game changer, since it makes individuals confront their own behavior without you filling in the details, rushing back to them for confirmation or closure. This is why it works, folks. Are accustomed to receiving responses when they disengage, so they anticipate that you will chase to clarify or to demonstrate weakness by keeping quiet. You're not. They don't receive the comfort that you're still playing their game because you're setting your own rules. They're left with the empty space while they wait for you to be within reach. That silence provides them with the time and space that your absence creates. Chance to reflect on themselves without your continual presence in the background. They are left to think for themselves. Their own uncertainties, they may begin to question whether they made a mistake in assessing you, whether you're moving on, or whether you've found anything. More significant than their erratic presence, your silence turns into a mirror. For them to consider their own decisions and understand the consequences of your absence without you having to do something right now. Don't assume that just because it's quiet, you're not just sitting there doing nothing. They don't have to be aware of every detail, but they'll understand that you're actively living, creating and prospering in your own world, feeling that you're developing and going forward without them. Your quiet doesn't imply weakness. Rather, it indicates that this affirmation is for those who are strong enough to let go of the desire to justify themselves or look for approval. Help you with this step. My strength is in my quiet. Whenever you feel remind yourself of this by pulling to reach out, respond and interact. Your decision to remain silent is a declaration of strength rather than a show of weakness, demonstrating to them without using any words that your worth is unaffected by their focus. And don't be concerned that they will forget you because of this quiet taken together. Everything you've created thus far will be more powerful than words. They'll feel the loss more when you leave them in the dark than if you were following them. Since you're not playing there, they'll be the ones worried about you now that you've altered the rules of the game. Stay with me, because all you've built will be cemented in our last stage. If you're prepared to regain your power, click the like button to make sure you're genuinely unforgettable. In silence, and sign up for the transformation's grand conclusion. 7th, now that you've done the work, let them strive for what they can't have, and turn the game around in silence, allowing them to reach for what this is about maintaining your value and letting them sense here's the impact of your absence, and letting them know that you're no longer within their easy reach. In actuality, when you make yourself scarce, people value what they have to work for. When you stop providing continuous access, you increase your worth, but you're no longer a given or a backup. You've turned into something unique that they must seek out. They can't take you for granted. They are now confronted with the fact that if they want you in their lives, they must accept the fact that you are no longer available. They'll need to take charge, reach out, and demonstrate their worth of your now. About it this way: you're not as vulnerable as they once were. You've closed the chapter whenever they'd want, and if they'd like another chance, it's not about being petty or playing hard to get. They'll have to earn it. About building a life of confidence and standing tall in the value you've realized at every turn of this path, and a feeling of direction that is independent of their existence. Now they're those who must demonstrate their worth, are allowed to reach after things they are unable to obtain, which also entails remaining committed to the limits you've established. If they attempt to reappear, don't open the door right away. Set expectations for how you should be handled, and they ought to understand that any less will not do. This is a sign of your developed self-respect, not a test. You're someone they must meet on your level and are no longer available at their whim. It's normal to be concerned that reaching them could result in their loss, but if they genuinely value you, here's the reality: they will step up to the challenge. If not, they never wanted to offer you the consideration and work you merit. If you succeed, you're not squandering time on someone who isn't prepared to accept your value. You're allowing oneself to draw in those who truly appreciate and respect you. Here's a reminder to keep in mind when you complete this last step. I am worth when you're tempted to compromise or reduce your standards, say effort to remind yourself that you deserve to be. You are more valuable than just being someone's backup. Therefore, don't be taken for granted. Let them reach your goals because you deserve their utmost effort, respect, and attention. Allow them to sense the void your absence leaves, and help them realize that being with you is a luxury rather than a given. When they come to terms with the fact that they can no longer have you as easily, they will begin to recognize your actual worth. You've accomplished it. You've developed your strength and regained your value, so you're not pursuing or craving anything anymore. Knowing exactly who you are and allowing them to reach for what they cannot have is about valuing oneself over transient attention. If they return, it's on your words, but if they don't, you're already doing well. Keep in mind that your power lies in your independence, self-assurance, and the capacity to go forward unfazed. Click the like button if you're prepared to continue developing this strength, and to subscribe for additional information on how to become the best version of yourself.